Three, two, one.
Hey, welcome back to the Godfo Universe podcast. I'm Josh Adams, co creator of the Godfo Universe. I'm here with Dan Evans, writer and also co creator of the Godfo Universe. We're just going to talk
Procreator.
some.
I've got
We're
another
going
baby on the way.
to. He's literally a creator. Now we're going to talk some interesting things today, some pretty cool topics. So I'm looking forward to it. But before we get into that, if you haven't done it yet, subscribe, like and subscribe either on YouTube or up on Spotify if you want to follow us there. Go to the www.godfouniverse.com and get on our mailing list. There's a lot of things to check out there, videos, short films, the Lamentations, which are a really cool kind of a experimental poetry and short stories that are tied into the Godfo universe. And we have a pretty big event coming up for Free Comic Book Day. This coming Saturday, we'll be at Galactic Comics in Florence, South Carolina, signing books. If you're free, we'd love to see you there. And Dan, let's get into it. What are we talking about today?
It's springtime, and I wanted to talk about what all that means as far as new beginnings, and greatness of.
Nude beginnings.
What was that? Isn't that a sculpture? It's called like nude descending a stairwell or whatever.
I know there's a Picasso painting that's that has that title.
Maybe that's it. Maybe it's a painting, not
It's
a
a
sculpture.
Cubist painting.
But now I kind of wanted to. This is like the first spring in a long time that I've actually like cared about.
I gotcha.
Like for all that entails, which is like new beginnings and stuff. And
Right.
I also feel like a lot of that's kind of been lost in our modern world. Like to say,
Well, if you think about
it,
it, yeah, if you think about it as a societal thing, I think some of what's lost in that we could chalk up to no longer being a agrarian society.
yeah,
Whereas the solstices and the beginning of spring and then the fall and time for harvest and all that stuff, it had a lot more deeply ingrained meaning to the culture because at one time, everything that everyone did, their whole livelihood was attached to those seasons and those changes. And we kind of feel that less now. Even to the point that like you got sometimes there are like office buildings and things that try to simulate natural light just so people can feel like they're experiencing something of the day passing, because they're locked in a box in a cubicle all the time.
yeah. That's actually one of
We've
the things
lost touch
about.
with that.
That's actually one of the things about solitary confinement. They said was so horrible. It wasn't even just like being alone. It was that if there's like no window and no light, you can't tell what time of day it is, and your brain just goes crazy. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's insane.
So yeah, there's definitely, I think, a sense of deep connection to the changing of the seasons that we've lost now. Uh, and I would agree. Like this is this has been a little bit of a different kind of year for a lot of reasons, but yeah, there's been a sense of hopefulness. I think for me, at least, uh, this year, the idea of really, we got the book coming out this year.
Mm-hmm.
The first book, Apollyon, is coming out this year, and that's been a labor of love and just really trying to make it the best it can possibly be.
Yeah.
We've been working on the podcast here. We've been working on so many things, and to finally start seeing the fruits of that, it is exciting. It does kind of fill you with a hope and that idea of, all right, let's start fresh.
Yeah.
Let's see what grows.
No, I mean that's what I wanted to talk about. Especially what you just said, like on the greater scale of things, and then we can branch out and bring it in smaller, more specific, more Pacific, like the Oakland. Why it's spelled Okian. uh, Yeah, I mean, I'm just gonna go ahead and say it. Like that's what Orwell talked about in 1984. Is like time frozen in place. Like who controls the past, controls the future. Who controls the present, controls the past until it's the end of history, and time is frozen in a bottle, basically. And that's what like, especially with COVID and all the stuff, and all. But that's what all like the craziness, like the news stuff and all the fear. That's what it does. It's to freeze you in place because we're not a society or a culture that needs or that we think we don't need cycles anymore. And
Mm.
people learned that the hard way with the Dust Bowl is that the Earth does work in cycles, and that you have to even plant things a certain way at a certain time. Otherwise, everything just gets destroyed. Everything gets
Mhm.
tired, and the only way to have new birth, which that kind of new birth thing is kind of like a lost trope, I think, in modern entertainment. Even there's replacement. Like there's
Mhm.
the hero getting upstaged by his younger, usually more female counterpart, but not no idea of like actual like because there's no real tutelage or mentorship or growing. It doesn't feel like that cycle of having to cultivate something, and I think that's an idea people have been complaining about and trying to articulate for a while.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's very true. And I think some of it too. So many people go through what they call seasonal depression,
Yeah.
and I wonder if a lot of that has to do with ingrained in us somewhere is that idea that okay, it's spring, it's summer, or it's fall. Something should be changing right now,
Mm-hmm.
but then you're stuck in the same rut. Well, that creates a tension in you that turns into a depression that you can't quite put your finger on.
Yeah, it's like
Um,
something. Everything should be moving. Things should, and I talk about that a lot with my wife. Is like, man, sometimes I just gotta go drive. Like I'm gonna go get in my
well,
truck and just go. Like movement is really good for you.
when you look at the book of Genesis, and in Genesis, Isaac's wife Rebecca, when she's pregnant with Jacob and Esau, and they're struggling even in the womb with each other, she makes this statement. She said, "If all is well, then why am I like this?"
Yeah.
And I think that's something, I actually spoke on that this morning at our church, but that idea of, if all is well, if everything is really as good as they want me to believe it is, if this
Mm-hmm.
is actually how life is supposed to be, then why am I like this? Like,
Yeah.
why is there a depression? Why is
Yeah.
all this
Why do
anxiety
why
here?
do I need so many pills? If like,
Yeah, like if
yeah,
if all is well, why does it not feel well?
yeah.
Why do I not feel that joy and light and life explosion that spring is supposed to bring? Why did not see? It's like the idea was, historically, spring you plant,
Mm-hmm.
right? And everything's bright, everything, that you
Everything's
get out there,
growing.
you
Yeah, fertilizing.
yeah, and then you got all the flowers blooming, it's beautiful outside, all that stuff. You get to the summer, and yeah, you work, but you understand, yeah, I'm going to work, and it's going to be hot, and it's going to be hard, but I'm working towards something, and that something is the fall. You get the harvest,
Mm-hmm.
and then winter comes, and you get a break.
Yep. You get a rest, and it's cold. You can't go outside. You can't plant anything.
Yeah, and you recharge because you're inside with your people and with your family, and you get to enjoy the fruits of all the labors and that harvest. You get to put back for the winter and enjoy that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It's not and that mentality, I think we all still want that, but the life that we most of the time, the lives that we live don't allow for that, and so there's a tension there that makes us uncomfortable.
Yeah, and with that analogy, which is the cycle of life, the
Hmm.
thing that stays the same is that there's someone there to begin the growing again, or something survives and it can start again. Like a tree is there that its leaves out off and came back. What the trope we see in like a lot of modern media and stories is that there isn't a progenitor. It's something trying to
Hmm.
give birth to itself after the
Hmm.
after the destruct, or even trying to actively destroy what was before it.
Hmm.
And that idea of being self-begotten, it always fails. You can't do
Hmm.
it.
Well, that's one of the things, to look at that, that trope in storytelling. I think that's one of the reasons why Yeah, I like the idea of the character of Black Panther
Mm-hmm.
inheriting that mantle.
Yeah, that was always a cool
There
thing
was
from him.
one of the first superhero characters in existence was the Phantom, and he was in like comic strips and stuff. And the Phantom was like a generational hero. It was again a mantle passed down from son or from father to son to son to son and onward, and that sense of inheriting something and then
Yeah, and
keeping it
having to
alive
carry
is
it, you have
what
to
really.
become the man that's strong enough to carry it.
Hmm. Yeah, it's a bar set
Mm-hmm.
to aspire to, and then it's not something that you're meant to keep. It's not something you're meant to hold on to forever. It's meant to be passed along. That is something that we've lost. And see, there again, though, people in modern business, nobody's irreplaceable. But there was a time when the family farm, you understood. Like I've worked it, I've taken care of it, I've tended it, and someday, this becomes the farm that that will provide for my children, and they'll tend it
Yeah.
and they'll work on it. And maybe they'll develop it in different ways than I did. Maybe they'll use a new technology I didn't have or whatever. But I did the best I could to give them something that could provide, and then they're going to take it and run with it, and hopefully make it better and pass it along to their kids.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something now you just once you're done, you're an interchangeable piece. You're just a cog.
Mm-hmm.
You quit, they don't care. They'll find somebody else. Somebody else that can do your job.
Yeah.
That sense of ownership and legacy, those are things that really don't exist anymore.
Yeah, and that's what we're moving toward because the obsolescence of man it has to be a precursor to the abolition of man.
Right.
You have to not need him anymore before he's gone. But I mean, that's the whole thing with digital media and why they're trying to phase that out. Is because then it's interchangeable. It's just digital, and like the customer is just the customer is just gonna be okay. Let's get this into like the BBC did was like when you buy a TV, you have to pay a tax to the BBC to keep it on. Like they don't care
Mm,
that you don't watch it. The customer has become replaceable.
mm.
You see what I'm saying? That's the goal for everything is that
Yeah.
every single person is replaceable. And of course, we go into that with our stuff, and that's we go into with the order, especially with Imperial Metal. I mean, the whole goal is to like try to replace humans in some capacity. And yeah, I think.
And to show to show how dehumanizing it is
Mm-hmm.
when that's the society that you live in, and that's the view that the powerful or the wealthy or whoever, the elites, the order, that's how they view the vast majority of people. And I think that that's where you and I and to throw out some praise for Legacy Comics, which is the home of at least the comic book end of our Godfo
Yeah, there
universe
are a
stuff.
publisher.
Yeah. To put shine a light on them, that's something that Patrick and all of those guys have done really well, is getting out in front of people, doing signings, doing like interacting with individuals, and making those individuals feel like, hey, you as a fan matter to us as a company. Like
Yeah,
we want to give you something that you feel connected to, and we want those people to feel appreciated. And I think that Legacy has done a good job of that. That's something that that you and I really want to make sure everyone who engages with any arm of our the Godfrey universe understands, is like, we don't look at you as just somebody that we're trying to sell to. It's somebody that we want to take a journey with. Like we want to invite you into this with us in a way that you feel a sense of belonging, like that this doesn't exist without you. It's a
yeah.
symbiotic relationship.
Well, that was so surprising to a lot of people over the past 5 to 10 years is when companies started saying, "Well, if you're so and so, or if you're like so and so, we don't want you as a customer." And it's like, dude, when in
Mhm.
history has a corporation been able to pick their customers? And then, of course,
Yeah, when have you
yeah,
ever heard anybody say, "Hey, we don't if you don't vote the way we do, we don't
yeah.
want your business."
Yeah, I mean, I've seen people, like individuals get thrown out of restaurants in the past and stuff like that before for being rowdy. It's like, oh, I don't want your business, I get that, but like entire blocks of people. I mean, but then of course we discovered ESG scores and all this kind of stuff. It's like, oh, they're getting money from other means. They don't even need profit anymore. And I don't want to I
Yeah.
don't want to go down that rabbit hole. But I mean, but that's the whole thing. Is like, man, when you can't view customers as interchangeable. Like that's never been a thing in business ever. Like
No.
that's a
Like, what are
weird.
you?
Yeah.
Are you allergic to money?
Yeah. And it's like, well, they're getting. It turns out they're being paid to dump customers. That's
Exactly.
what's crazy.
Exactly.
Um, but yeah, I mean, that's the thing is like I think I was gonna go somewhere with it. Oh, the trope of like the new modern heroes. Like we'll go with like Miles Morales or X-23. They eventually always try to push them to take the quote unquote mantle from characters that were never mantle characters. Like Spider Man was
Hmm.
never a mantle. I mean, I know they did 2099, but I'll be honest. Like I liked 2099's design. I never read Spider Man 29. I never cared to because he wasn't Peter Parker. So I know they're really pushing him for this new movie and all that stuff, but like I don't care about him. I've never cared about him, but I care about Peter Parker. But especially like X-23, she's a clone of Wolverine, and like she was really cool as X-23, and then they put her in that Wolverine suit, and she has always looked awful in that. And you know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like that's just such a bad design, especially for like the female form. It looks so awful. But I'm getting to the point here because they're trying to have everything, and they're trying to freeze the world, the perpetual present. They have to have both of them all at the same time. You've got Wolverine, and you've
Hmm.
got quote unquote new Wolverine. You've got Peter Parker, and you got Miles Morales. They won't even let go of the past in a good way, which is the only way to go forward. And they won't
Hmm.
kill it, which is a stupid way to do it, which is what Star Wars tried to do. But so it's just nothing. It's nothing.
Yeah. Well, and we've talked about it before too. Like in our approach to storytelling, like dead is dead
Mm-hmm.
in the Godfo universe. It's not gonna be. Yeah, and the stakes as we set them up are absolutely that high of a stake. If a character dies, that character is gone, and they're aware of that mortality, and so that influences how they live and the decisions they make. And some characters don't care if they die or not, and some of them do. But that that sense of, oh, they're gone, but we'll see them again in a month or two. Like
Mm-hmm.
dead is dead, and I think that that's something that should have been more substantial in Marvel and DC for a long time. Is that idea of like, okay, you kill a character off. Superman. I enjoyed the reign of the Superman. Like when I thought it was so
Mm-hmm.
cool as a kid. I've
Yeah,
got a lot
I
of those
still like it.
issues.
Yeah, I still got them.
Yeah, it's a good story. So like, I'm not taking away from that story. It's a good story, but the best thing that they could have done would have been if to let the man stay dead,
Yeah.
and then his legacy becomes something a lot more significant.
Mm-hmm. Or at least, and then bring him back in like other titles or something like that. Other worlds or whatever. But you could have had that whole one run, like a whole thing run, and then just be done with it. But
Yeah.
I mean, I think they're just afraid. I mean, the most successful franchise of all time, at least for a long time, was Star Wars. And Darth Vader
Hmm.
dies at the end, but he was still like one of the most sold toys ever, like consistently.
Hmm.
And it's like, I mean, let's go to like Japan, like Akira and that stuff. It's like characters that die still sell, guys. Like I don't understand like why you can't let some of these things die and let some of these things. But I get comics are kind of different because they're serialized, or at least they were, and it was a little
Hmm.
different. But even Claremont, as late as Claremont, he thought characters were going to stay dead when he killed them,
Hmm.
and of course they didn't. But I think that's the thing that people use as an excuse. Is they're like, well, comics have always done that. It's like, man, and even in the late '80s, these writers thought that these guys were going to stay dead.
Hmm.
So I don't think it's that old of a trope as people think. I can't find
Right.
evidence that it's as old as that.
Right. Well, seeing like the you take Batman, and there's way too many characters in the Bat family
Yeah,
now.
it's lame.
And the thing is, we've been through. You had Dick Grayson. He becomes Nightwing. He becomes a character, a hero in his own right. That's that's a good story. You have Jason Todd,
Mm-hmm.
who everyone
Dead.
thought he was dead. They brought him back as the Red Hood, but they actually gave him an identity that worked for him and is a really cool character.
Mm-hmm.
And that is in front of Bruce to see, yeah, this is a failure. This is an absolute failure on my part.
Yeah, and having a bad guy Robin is top one. Got to be one of the strongest villains in DC history. I mean,
Yeah, it's
a
a
dude that's
great
trained.
idea.
Yeah, a dude that's trained by Batman is deadlier than almost any villain.
Yeah, it's a great idea.
Yeah.
But when they took Batman and broke his back and all of that stuff, and Azrael took over for a while, and Batman had to
Yeah.
build back. That all of that was great,
Because it was the show that no one can replace Batman. Yeah.
right? And that's the thing is, for all these most recent years, there's been all those battle for the cowl
Yeah,
and all this stuff,
which
and
was pretty
Batman
cool.
R.I.P.
Yeah, I thought Battle
Yeah,
for the Cow was
but
all right. Yeah.
yeah, but the idea is like we all know that they're never really going to let him pass the cow.
Yeah, he can't.
Batman is all he can't. You either kill him off, or like the best way to do it is what Frank Miller did: have him come back as an old, bitter Batman who changes to some degree, and by the time it gets to the end of that story, he's laid aside being Batman in exchange for training up a new generation to take care of themselves
Mm-hmm.
and to take care of their city.
Yep. With the idea being that maybe if I get them, they'll spread it out, and the entire city can adopt my ideology.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I can make Gotham not need Batman because I'm gonna remake it in my image.
And see, that's what I think. It worked really well in the Dark Knight movie.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like they Christopher Nolan screwed up. He definitely messed up the landing with the Dark Knight Rises.
Yeah.
But the way that they introduced that idea that there's someday there could be a day when this city does not need a Batman.
Yep.
That was a great idea.
Yeah. It wasn't ready.
I mean,
yet.
that should be the goal. Yeah, that should be the goal. Is one day they don't need me anymore.
Mm-hmm. And the thing with that is, Harvey Dent, he just did it a little too early, a little too brashly. He wasn't
Mm-hmm.
like he did it out in the open. He did what Bruce couldn't do, which was do it out in the open. But then look what he couldn't bear it whenever it came back on him in Batman. They don't discuss it, but I mean that's the thing is, Bruce kind of realizes, could I have bared it? What if I lost Rachel? What if I'd have burned half alive too? Could I have still been, if I didn't have Batman to hide behind?
Right.
And that's the whole
right.
thing. This idea of cycles, man. Like we gotta break out. Like, the internet doesn't have cycles. Like things like corporate jobs, like you were saying. Like there's got to be something in your life where we have to get back to rituals, whatever they are, and you have to get back to cycles.
Mm-hmm. Well, our bodies need it. Our brains need it. Like
Yeah.
it's ingrained in us for a reason. And when you remove yourself from that, or when you're forced into a position where you lose that, it's detrimental to your physical and mental health. It's detrimental to creativity.
Yeah, and the perpetuation isn't stagnation is the god of the day. And
Mm-hmm.
what we see in our society, what our society teaches us is you need to be young, attractive, and successful.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, and then what's after that? Like, there's nothing after that. That's just it. And that's
Well,
what.
and let's park there for a minute,
Yeah.
because we look at youth and being young as though youth itself was a virtue.
Instead of just a matter of time and chance.
Yeah, it just is. Yeah, and people, they look at youth and they assume, well, because because they're young, they're going to be they're going to reset the board, and they bring all these young people into these different fields, and young writers, young artists, and they don't take those young artists and young writers and mentor them and teach them. They just say, here's the car, drive.
Mm-hmm.
And what you end up with is not something that's necessarily all that great. The young need guidance, whether they want it or not. They need it.
Yeah.
You can't tell me, because everyone says, oh, the youth, the young, they're more hungry, and they've got. Watch Mad Max Fury Road and tell me that old George Miller, that old dude, wasn't hungry, and creative and wildly inventive in that movie.
Well, that's also a lie. The children today aren't hungry unless they're like in Africa.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't mean that just in the physical sense. I mean that in every sense. What are they hungry for?
Yeah.
Other than money. And most of them that work in these fields aren't hungry for money because they come from money. We don't talk about that, but if you look at a wild percentage of guys in like entertainment, these aren't Rocky Balboa stories anymore.
No, they're not.
Yeah.
No, they're not. And that's not to say that they're not talented. That's not to say that they could not become really
look at
great.
John 5. John 5 was born rich as hell, and like he's one of the best guitar players on the planet.
Yeah. But there was a genuine hunger in him to become that.
Yeah, he still went under a humbling thing and I'm gonna try to outdo some of the greatest guys ever, and the only way to do that is to learn from them. Yeah.
Right. And you've got a generation of young people. I don't know, we sound like old whiny old farts to say this, but you got a lot of people in that generation that just they don't want to learn from anybody above them. They don't want to learn those lessons. They don't want to hear anything from any voice other than themselves or whatever echo chamber tells them that they're right.
Yeah. And that's the thing is, I mean, and this stuff, like, have you seen that? You saw those videos, and Elon Musk kind of proved it, but all those videos are like people at work, like it's like a lot of women at work on TikTok, and they're showing like their average day, and they don't do anything. And they're making like probably up to 6 figures getting free food from a job, and none of them realize that company just wants you there. Like they don't want you to have a home. They don't want you to have a family, because if you're there, even if you're not doing much, they're still squeezing what they can out of you. And they can write that off, especially in certain ways if you're like a certain kind of person. And that's sad.
Yeah,
that's really sad. They're using you. But the dude laid off 80% of Twitter and nothing changed. That's the whole thing. It's like a lot of people want to be taken care of. It's like, man, like that's like, no, you should have like your freedom and your pioneerism to go. But I guess what I'm saying is I'm a little disgruntled with the indie comic scene and of course indie music and all that stuff, because there's also kind of a niche that guys have found, which is if I draw big boobs, it'll sell enough. And that's like, I get it. Like some women are curvaceous, and that's great. That's an ideal to reach for in beauty, when in art. I get that, but man, can you call yourself an artist? Like, you know what I mean? And like I said, I'm not a Puritan. I watch anime, but anime found a way to incorporate it really well too. And Evangelion probably did that better than anybody, because that's the point of it. That's the whole thing with Shinji, is that he's surrounded by these girls that probably would throw themselves at him if he were more masculine. And he fails. Like, that's the whole thing, is all these pressures around him that he won't live up to. And maybe the reason he's not living up to them is because everyone's trying to do it for him and give it to him.
Yeah.
Yeah. And anyway, all that to say, like, as an artist, man, it's super hard, but that's why I'm saying it, like, because you got to do it too. Like, if you have any weakness, don't make excuses for it.
Yeah,
like,
own it.
That's super hard. Like, that's super hard to do. I hate to do it too, but I mean, I was talking with a Zekomancer. I don't think we've had him on the show, but he was on the Loot Brothers with me.
I was gonna say he did the Loot Bros episode.
Yeah, check out his gaming page, Zekomancer, Zekezo Mancer, Mancer, like a neuromancer, or necromancer, but Zekomancer. Super great game player, like unbelievably good at it, can beat anything. But I was talking with him, I was like, man, it's really hard to be a man. And like, but that's the whole point. Like, that's why that title is important,
Yeah,
because
it's
it's hard.
supposed to be hard.
Yeah, because why? And it's like, why? Well, because the world makes it hard. Because otherwise, like, nature will kill you. But since we're
Well,
living,
and
yeah,
to take it even deeper than that from a theological standpoint, I know not everybody who reads this is a believer or listens to this is a believer, and that's fine. I'm
yeah,
just
just
so
consider it
Dan and I
just
are.
consider it an artistic or philosophical perspective.
Yeah, yeah, but if you look at the story of the fall, it's always the fall of who? The
Man,
fall of man.
yeah,
And how does man fall when Eve is the one who first eats it? Well, because God had made man responsible
mm-hmm,
and held man responsible. And then, you look at the curses that are laid out. The curse that's given to man is like, you're going to work
yep,
by the sweat of your brow. And I've made the ground produce thorns and thistles. I have made the earth that you have to work hostile to you. Work is
mm-hmm,
going to be a chore for you. Work isn't going to the curse of the fall was the loss of the joy of our work.
yeah. And that's why the idea of a utopia where things are easy is impossible, and it's so destructive.
Mm-hmm.
It's not possible. Like, it will kill you worse than anything. I mean, a sedentary lifestyle will kill you faster than like hunting in the woods if you know what you're doing,
Mm-hmm.
because it just, your body's not made for it. It's made for movement and challenge and change. And I mean, full disclosure, I hate my job, and most people do. And probably a lot of that's because it's not only because you don't see anything from it, it's because you're not challenged in it.
Yeah,
Most
you don't
people
get to
aren't
go out
challenged
and
at their job.
don't get to go out and collect the harvest and
Well,
provide for
yeah,
your family with
and
it.
I am by no means preaching for a theocracy here. I'm not, because I mean, I already did a video with Stephen Crowley on Christian nationalism and how we thought it was a bad idea and impossible from a Christian perspective. But I get why every society tied everything into religion. They tied politics,
Yeah.
they tried, because it gave everything meaning. It's, even like the Native Americans, we hear the whole thing of like, oh, they didn't waste any food. And it's like, it wasn't just because it was hard to get. It was like, well, if we give it meaning, if we thank the animal for it, if we do this, we just, it made it not pointless. Any part of it.
Right.
No part of it was pointless.
Well, and see, I love you said a word, and it's an important word is the idea of challenge.
Yeah.
And for those of you listening, there is a legacy chat, an ongoing chat room with all of us that are part of Legacy's team.
Roster, yeah.
I don't know if you saw the variant cover that Patrick put up that Steve had done for the job that he put in there today.
I have not.
It's a phenomenal piece of work, and like it made me feel good to see it, because I immediately felt challenged by it.
Yeah.
Because of what a good piece of art it was. That's Steve Conjay, who currently is doing the job.
Oh, you know what? Yeah, that's a really good cover. The shadow is really
It's
good.
dope.
Yeah.
It's so good. And like I could tell, because I've lettered some of the job for them. Like I've seen like his art since he came in, and like I see him getting better and better and better, and that challenges me get better and better. And I love that challenge of seeing that there's somebody else on the team that's putting it in. I love it whenever with Kieran Quinn that does the art for Condry. He's a phenomenal artist, and I love the challenge of being on a team with people that I can't slack off.
Yeah.
I can't be less, because the bar is raised. And my job is to come in. I need to put something that makes them feel the same way. Like when they see Apollyon, it should make them feel challenged too.
Yeah.
The challenge is good. Difficulty is good.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's I always like hoped and prayed I'd be like surrounded by people in art that were way better at what they do than I am. Like I
Right.
always wanted to be the least talented one in like my bands and stuff. And with this, I mean that's the thing. I mean, you and I knew each other for like 10, 15 years, and we've been talking and building, but we haven't been working with each other except for like maybe 3 or 4. But within
Hmm.
that time, because we both had so much experience doing that, I mean, it was like people talk about iron sharpening iron. I mean, this was like just chopping like bits, like throwing like rocks together and breaking it. And it's
Hmm.
like, and the only way to do that is through blatant honesty and hard work. It's to like everything I send and he sends has to one up everybody. Like it has to be consistent competition, and
And it's
competition
not
has been,
about
yeah,
it's not about being a jerk. Like
no,
it's not about like you're not trying to be an ass to people. You're just trying to be the best you can be. And if you're doing that, you're consistently going to challenge and be challenged.
oh
If
yes,
that's the bar and the expectation that you set, you're going to consistently aim for it. And so is everybody else. They're either going to aim for it or they're going to get out
mm-hmm,
because they can't take it.
mm-hmm. The temperature should always be rising because that tempers you to be
Yeah.
stronger to take it.
Yeah.
And I mean, and that's been discussed like ad nauseum from people that complain about modern media, but it's true though, especially with the modern like female hero when they're not challenged.
Yeah.
And we could get into that. Like there are like that is a part of sex differences that goes all the way back to the biology of man, which is that men have to strive to because women choose their sexual partners and control breeding in populations. They have innate worth because they carry eggs, and that men who
Hmm.
carry sperm have to compete for that right. That's a whole thing.
Hmm.
But I'm saying, but then they take that, and of course, like you get like was it the modern Mulan where it was like she's just better because she was born with magic, and the whole
Hmm.
story like that takes away the whole story of Mulan, which was like I have to work harder and train harder than men because I'm weaker naturally,
Right.
and that was the whole thing. You know that challenge was taken away.
Well, see, that's why to this day, because I think last week they had the as like a national holiday or whatever, Alien Day.
I don't know.
That's why the original Alien still holds up so well. Is
Mm-hmm.
that you look at that ship and that cast. The reason Ripley is such a strong character is because she's more competent than just about everybody on that ship.
And they play into it because they did it so well because her
Hmm.
competence came from her female way of being, and some of that was fear, and I hate to use this term, but neuroticism and hysteria. But I'm saying that in the psychological sense, even though hysteria is pretty much an offensive idea, but I will admit that one hysteria is pretty. But it like she was afraid more. Everyone else was
But she
pretty chill, you know.
but she had good reason to
Exactly,
be, and
exactly.
that's what's smart. She's like whenever they open up the door and let him in, she's like, "No, you
Yeah,
don't.
she's
He's
like,
not coming in here with
she's
this
like,
thing
no,
wrapped around
this
his head."
violates protocol. This, and we don't know what it is. And she's genuine. She's already afraid. That's a natural sense that's coming.
And she's right.
Yeah,
And
she
she's
was right.
right.
And everyone else, even like I think the other woman, the blonde, was just kind of like downplaying it and downplaying it. And it was
Hmm.
that awareness of fear and threat that made, and of course, and what made it so good was that she is like she's not a dude. She's not the strong one. She's not the big one, and she overcomes it, and she has to do it a certain way. And
Hmm.
a lot of it was outsmarting it and outthinking it, and that's what made it.
Hmm.
I don't know. Yeah, that's what made it so good. And then the second one was she was stronger even than the female Marine because
Hmm.
it was her motherly instinct.
Right.
And they did that twice in a row so good. In the third one, they killed off Newton. That was such a stupid
Yeah. Yeah.
idea.
That's a whole different story. But
Yeah.
yeah, her character arc through those first two movies, though, that's how. I mean, there's a reason she's still, to me, Ripley is still the high watermark for how
Mm-hmm.
you write a
And her and
strong
Sarah Connor.
female. Yeah, and Sarah Connor. Those two characters are the best archetypes of female heroes, and I don't know that I've ever seen anything that tops them.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it's because for some reason we got this. I'm not going to go into the whole thing, but we got the idea that women are weak, and they are naturally on average weaker than men. But if you ever had to physically fight with a woman, like it's still really hard, and because of that, especially, I mean, but here's the thing, like guys, mother bear or female bears are weaker than male bears. Which one do you want to encounter in the wild? Do you want
Yeah,
to
they're
like,
weak. They
yeah,
physically weaker, but they're more
yeah,
savage.
well, again, you want to like mess with. It sucks to get attacked by a male bear on his territory. It really sucks to get attacked by a mama bear that thinks you're after her cubs. Like that
Yeah,
is way worse.
yeah.
And that's across the entire animal kingdom. But you
Hmm.
have to know where that savagery and potential comes from. And this isn't me trying to regulate it, but it's like it usually comes from a motherly instinct
Hmm.
or the female awareness of danger. Because, like, the trope is in reality is, women want safety, at least from a partner, And if you threaten
Hmm.
that safety, there's hell to pay.
Hmm.
Um, But anyway, yeah, that's where that comes from. And at least it seems like writers at that time understood that.
Hmm.
Um,
Well, and the other side of that too is like statistically, when it comes to who being murdered, there's a much higher rate that a woman's going to be murdered, and usually by a spouse or a random man. They literally do
oh
live
yeah,
a
or
more dangerous
well,
existence
I'm gonna
in that
push.
sense.
Yeah,
In that
yeah,
sense.
I'm gonna push back just a little bit because men are more likely to be killed by other men on average than women killed by men. But the threat level as differentiation is true. You're right because if a man encounters another man, he has greater chance. If a woman,
Yeah, when
yeah,
I
yeah,
said
yeah,
being killed by a man, I meant within the statistic of within the death rate of women.
I got you.
Inside
Yeah,
that,
I got you. Sorry, yeah,
men are liable. So,
yeah,
they do
that's
have to
absolutely
be
true.
more
Yeah,
aware.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if I go to Target at 9 o'clock at night, I'm not
Mm-hmm.
worried about myself.
Yeah,
But a woman has to be
yeah.
aware of their surroundings. And
If you go to a party, you could be afraid of being accused of rape.
yeah. But like when you look at writing a female character that's really strong,
Mm-hmm.
you there are aspects of that personality and that psyche that not everybody does a good job with.
You have to understand
And if you
people and motivation.
yeah, if you just write a woman and make her act like a man, well, that's not really a good character.
Yeah, but going with Alien, they did that in Alien 2 with Vasquez and did a
Hmm.
really good job of it. But they show like here's a woman that can keep up with the men, this, but that's also ultimately what gets her killed.
Hmm.
And just like the men too, like that's the whole thing. This masculine view is like I'm gonna outthink, or I'm gonna out strategize and out rationalize and out maneuver this, or I'm gonna strength overpower this thing. And that's what she
Hmm.
kept saying. That's what Ripley kept saying. You cannot overpower this thing. You cannot. It is 100% savage. It's the ultimate killer. You've got to find a way to beat it. And I know I said she out thought it before, but she that's the ultimate thing. You have to outthink it. Like
Yeah, you
yeah,
can't go in there and say, "Well, I got a big gun and that's going to save
yeah.
me,"
You can't have
because
power.
clearly, you're not going to do that.
Yeah, I mean, and that's kind of Vasquez's arc in that
Hmm.
movie is kind of that realization. I think I'm remembering it correctly. I think she talks to Ripley at the end, and I think it was part of like just getting Newt out of there was what was their
Hmm.
end goal by the end of it.
Hmm.
And I could be misremembering that, but yeah, but that's the whole thing is, and that's a good trait. I mean, I think there probably are some people on YouTube that would probably call it woke if they saw that trope again in today's time. To be fair, if they saw a woman like Ripley like being like, "Hey, you guys can't outpower this thing. Like you have to outthink it. You have to do this," and they were always right, and that's wrong too as well. To like just immediately jump that when you see a competent woman that think there's a problem.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, I agree with you. I think it's really hard to top Ripley and Sarah Connor, and but that's the thing too is you see with Sarah is she tried when she came. One of the mistakes is she got physically stronger and it helped her escape and see her son, but she crumbles the second the T-800 walks in the door.
Hmm.
It's like
Yeah,
she had thought she could conquer this fear of it by training and becoming stronger. And the second she saw Arnold walking around the corner, she just literally
yeah.
fell apart. And it's like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, physically or like masculinely training for this is not gonna. It's not.
Yeah.
That's not how you're gonna get through this. And she couldn't face the T1000 either. Like
Mm-hmm.
even when she tried to, it's like no matter what you do against this thing, it's not gonna work. And not to be cheesy, but it was like the power of love, friendship, and family, which ultimately how they beat it was getting the T800 to sacrifice himself.
Right.
Yeah, not to talk so much, but you can't avoid
Well, I
those
mean,
those natural rhythms.
and ultimately, it's the greatest thing she can do, and she understands that all the way through. I, it's my son who's going to beat this thing.
Yep, and it's my job to protect him.
Protect him and prepare him.
Yep.
And to even acknowledge later on in the movie, she acknowledges when she watches him interact with Arnold's Terminator,
Mm-hmm.
she realizes that there are things that a father can teach him that I can't.
Yeah, and it was also her love of him that gave John the capacity to love that thing.
Right.
Yeah, she did a good
Right.
job,
Right.
even though she was removed from his life. From everybody thinking she was crazy. Like John never thought she was crazy.
Right.
Yeah, his love for her is what gave him a capacity to love a father figure.
Exactly.
Yeah, but so we can't have that anymore. They even did
Well,
that with
not
Dark
even
Fate.
in that, not
Yeah,
even within that franchise.
yeah, they did that with Dark Fate, and it's just such trash. Um, again,
I haven't watched the last one I watched was Salvation, and I actually like that movie better than most people do.
yeah. Well,
Well, we've been about an hour now, bud. I don't know what kind of closing thoughts you might have to wrap all this stuff up. I know
um,
it was kind of a
yeah,
rolling conversation in some ways, but it's also been interesting.
yeah. I mean, I would just say, you know, to sound cheesy, it's like it doesn't matter your age, go do something. And we are kind of in a dark age for people that are past their quote unquote prime, as we're told by
Mm-hmm.
society. And a lot of people are having to reforge that path. And it's
Mm-hmm.
like, look, man, it's the way to do that is to honor rhythms, discipline, and reality, and work in the spring, find something else to do in the winter. And I don't even mean that physically, metaphorically, whenever it's time to work, and especially in the summer when it's super hard, that's when you work the hardest.
Press through, yeah, press through. Create create those rhythms. Is yeah, enforce that order in
Mm-hmm.
your life.
Yeah.
You know,
And
and vehemently oppose anything that tries to tear that down.
yeah, yeah.
Because
Anything.
there's a world out there that will crush your soul if you let it.
Yeah, and it'll do it two ways. It'll do it by trying to put pressure on you, and it'll do it by giving you comfort.
Yeah,
Yeah, comfort will kill you fast, man.
absolutely.
But
Well, again, guys, we hope you've enjoyed our conversations. Definitely reach out to us. We are going to try to get a Discord set up soon, so we can interact with all of you more. But we've got a Facebook group, the Godfrey Universe.
mm-hmm.
We have our mailing list from the website. We're up with this on YouTube and Spotify. We've got some other shows and things coming up in the near future that we'll be letting you know about.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Come out and see us at Galactic on Saturday.
It's the
Uh,
second largest comic book store in the country, isn't it? It's
yes,
the
and
largest on the East
it's the
Coast.
largest on the East Coast. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it's an incredible store. There's a lot of free comics. We got some other really cool guests that are going to be there that are way better, more well known than we are.
Yeah.
So come on out, meet us. We'd love to talk with you for a little while, and we just hope that everybody out there has got something that you're working on that makes living worth doing.
Yep. And the floodgates are about to open, guys. We've got a lot of stuff. Like I said, we've got an entire novel. We've got a video game coming. We've got albums, music, other comics. We've got like all this stuff is about to break out. This is a really cool thing to be a part of.
And we appreciate all the patience, all the support, and when the time comes that we can put that stuff out there and say, hey,
Yeah.
Go ahead and claim your copy. Keep in mind that by the time when we ask you for money, we'll have the work done.
Yep.
And at that point, it's a matter of us depending on you to help us see that come to life. And if you bet on us, we will bet on you.
Yeah, we're
We're
giving you
gonna,
more than anybody else will. Mainstream or
yeah.
indie, I promise you. So, and it will be on time. It's already on time, and it will always be on time. All right. Thanks. Peace.
Later.